Greetings and welcome to Master Chess Theater. In today's episode, we will travel back in time to November the 2nd, 1858. It was on this date that the great Paul Morphy defeated the Duke of Brunswick and Count Isouard while enjoying a night at the opera in what would become the most famous game of chess ever played. Paul Charles Morphy was born on June 22, 1837, into an affluent New Orleans family. His father, Alonzo Morphy, was a chess enthusiast and would become a Louisiana Supreme Court justice, while his mother, Louise Theresa Félicité Felcide Le Carpentier, was a superbly talented musician from a prominent French Creole family. In Paul's earliest years, he would often watch his father playing chess against guests while listening to his mother on the piano. As indicated by his uncle, Ernest Morphy, nobody formally taught Paul Morphy how to play chess. Rather, Morphy learned as a little youngster essentially from watching his father play. It was during one of these occasions that Paul quietly watched an extensive game between his father and uncle, in which they agreed to a draw, that Paul amazed them by expressing from his playpen that Ernest ought to have won. His father and uncle had not understood that Paul knew the moves and brought him closer to the board. They were shocked when little Paul demonstrated his case by resetting the pieces and showing the winning combination his uncle had missed. Such prodigious talent did not disappoint. By the age of 9, Paul Morphy was already considered the strongest chess player in New Orleans, which at the time was a hub of chess activity. News spread about the young chess genius so that when he was 12 years of age, the famous Hungarian chess master Johann Lowenthal visited the Morphys and was easily defeated in a 3-game match by the preteen Morphy. By 1857, Paul Morphy had already earned his law degree, but because of the laws in Louisiana at the time, couldn't yet practice law until after his 21st birthday. With more than a year to wait before attempting to follow in his father's footsteps, Paul was convinced to travel to New York to play in the first American Chess Congress, a national championship chess tournament. The first American Chess Congress was held in New York City from October 6 to November 10, 1857. The 16 best American masters were invited to participate in the event by the president of the American Chess Congress, legal scholar, and friend of Paul Morphy, Alexander Beaufort Meek. Morphy dominated the event, sweeping each of his opponents until facing Louis Paulsen in the final. Losing just one game in the final match, Paul Morphy finished the first American Chess Congress with an incredibly dominant record of 14 wins, 3 draws, and just 1 loss, and was now proclaimed to be the national chess champion of the United States of America. Now recognized as a national champion, Paul Morphy enjoyed life in New York for the rest of 1857, dominating the local chess scene and earning handsome sums of money playing chess against wealthy patrons. By 1858, news of Paul Morphy's incredible chess exploits were well known in European chess circles, and plans were made to have the great American chess player travel across the Atlantic Ocean to challenge the European champion Howard Staunton. Upon arriving in Europe, it quickly became apparent that Howard Staunton had no intention of playing a match against Paul Morphy, for Staunton knew, based on Morphy's published games, that he would lose. So while Staunton was busy ducking out of the way, Paul Morphy stole the spotlight. Every strong chess player and plenty of wealthy chess enthusiasts were eager to play Morphy, even if Staunton was not. The exceptionally wealthy Duke of Brunswick, with whom Morphy originally dined on the 19th of September, was a chess enthusiast, scarcely to be seen without a chessboard. During that dinner, the Duke made arrangements with Morphy to attend an opera in the Duke's box at the Paris Opera House. So now that we know more about the lead-up to our feature game, we return to the Duke's box seats at the Paris Opera House on the night of November the 2nd, 1858. Their seats were directly overlooking the stage, just feet away from the performers. Upon arriving in the box, Morphy was obliged to sit with his back to the stage. The Duke of Brunswick and Count Isouard were seated across a dimly lit chessboard from Morphy and would be teaming up with the black pieces against the American. Morphy began the game with the overture, and despite being in attendance at an opera, he played a symphony of chess artistry. Let us now watch his masterpiece play out. (1)e4, Paul Morphy's favorite way to start a game, followed by e5, 2 knight f3, knights before bishops, and 2d6. Philidor's defense was quite popular during the time of Paul Morphy's European adventures, and he was quite adept with either color of it. 3d4, Paul Morphy chooses to place a second pawn in the center. Of course, developing a second piece with a move like bishop c4 is also good. 3 bishop g4, a questionable choice for black. Generally speaking, it is a good idea to bring out a knight before the bishop. Here, black could have played knight f6 or knight d7. Also fine is exchanging pawns with 3 In fact, for further study, please see my notes to this game posted on dailychessmusings.com, in which I share 3 knight f6 as played by Richard Teachman versus Aaron Nimzovich, in which black won, 3 knight d7 from Kurt von Bardeleben versus Alexander Alyakin, and Alyakin won that game, and finally 3 knight d7 from Magnus Carlsen versus Shakhriyar Mamadyrov, and black also won in that game. Again, I've included all 3 of those options for black in my notes to this lesson on dailychessmusings.com. But in our actual game, the Duke Karl of Brunswick and the Count Isouard played 3 bishop g4, and Morphy played 4 dxe5, aiming to punish his opponent's last move. 4 bishop takes f3 is practically forced. Otherwise, if black had chosen 4 dxe5, queen takes d8 check, king takes d8, knight takes e5, and bishop e6, black is a pawn down and has lost their right to castle. Which is why the Duke and the Count played 4 bishop takes f3. 5 queen takes f3. It is fine for Morphy to develop his queen to f3, as it does not block the already exchanged knight that originated on g1. However, this didn't stop Steinitz from criticizing Morphy's play here. Steinitz, who enjoyed finding mistakes in Morphy's games, suggested the following: 5 gxf3, dxe5, queen takes d8, king takes d8, f4, knight f6, fxe5 threatening the knight, knight takes e4, bishop g2 threatening the knight again, knight c5, and then b4. This is obviously good for white, but history prefers Morphy's method. So back to our actual game with 5 queen takes f3. Black played 5 dxe5, an interesting position where both sides have one pawn in the center and active queens. Morphy's queen on an open rank, while the Duke and the Count's queen is on an open file. 6 bishop c4. White develops with a scholar's mate style threat. However, here Morphy's success is not dependent on poor play from his opponent, as is the case with the actual scholar's mate. 6, knight f6, developing a knight and blocking the queen's path to f7. 7, queen b3. A very powerful move which threatens both the pawn on b7 and the belly button on f7. 7, queen e7. The duke and count wisely decide to defend the pawn that is attached to their king's safety. 8, knight c3. Paul Morphy had 3 good choices here. The butcher's choice would be to play 8, queen takes b7, followed by queen b4 check, queen takes b4, and bishop takes b4 check. Maybe bishop d2, bishop takes d2, knight takes d2, and castle. And white went on to grind out a long endgame victory in Kunte Abhijit versus Akshay Vijan from Jalagan 2010. A robot could evaluate 8 bishop takes f7 check as best and win in a cold fashion. For example, after queen takes f7, queen takes b7, bishop c5, castle, castle, queen takes a8. And after 57 more moves, Stefan Mueller defeated Frank Hertel-Mach in the Mecklenburg-Vorpommern Landesliga 2005-2006. However, it took Paul Morphy to recognize that 8 knight c3 was the only move with potential to make the game a true artistic masterpiece. 8 c6. Now the black queen defends her pawn on b7. Additionally, the pawn on c6 guards d5 and b5 from being accessed by Morphy's knight, bishop, or queen. Unfortunately, it is also another slow pawn move for black, which gives Morphy an opportunity to add to his lead in development. 9, bishop g5. Momentarily stopped on the queen side, Morphy deploys another piece. Now he has 4 pieces in the game versus a pinned knight and an oddly placed queen. 9, b5. This is overly ambitious. Even players well below Morphy's level would not hesitate to sacrifice the knight for 2 pawns and the check. Alternatively, the duke and the count could have looked at 9, knight to a6, which is an important improvement over the move they chose. Play would likely have continued 10, bishop takes a6, bx a6, 11, castle, and then queen b4, where black has prospects to enter a difficult endgame against white. But the duke and the count played, again, the overly ambitious 9, b5. 10, knight takes b5. Of course, Paul Morphy does not retreat his bishop. Cx b5. And 11, bishop takes b5 check. The queen could also capture on b5 with check, but why use a $9 piece to do the work of a $3 piece? 11, knight b to d7. The duke and count must block with the knight, as stepping into the open file with the king would be suicide. For instance, had they played 11, king d8, then 12, castle check, king c8, and then rook d3, with the possibility of creating a battery in the d file or sliding the rook over and saying check in the 3rd rank. Black would be in serious trouble, which is why the duke and the count blocked check with knight b to d7. 12, castle queenside. Castling queenside adds the rook power to the pinned knight on d7. Rook d8. The duke and count place the rook on d8 because the knight on f6 and queen on e7 are not really defending d7. Black's king is in full turtle mode, i.e. hiding in his shell. 13. Rook takes d7. Paul Morphy fires the cannon for the first time. Rook takes d7. It's the only logical response for black. 14. Rook d1. Paul Morphy takes advantage of the fact that black's rook on d7 is pinned and reloads the cannon. 14. Queen e6. This move does a lot of good things for black. First, it threatens to trade queens, and thus take the heat off the black king. Second, it unpins the knight on f6, while still having the queen defend the rook on d7. Thirdly, it creates a roadway for the bishop on f8, and thus gives the black king an escape route by castling. Unfortunately for the duke and the count, this move doesn't work. Let's pause here, and I will give you 3 minutes to find the beautiful combination Paul Morphy uses to make history in the Opera House game. Perhaps you found bishop takes d7 check, the start of a beautiful combination. Knight takes d7, of course. Queen b8 check, the shot heard round the world. Knight takes b8. Rook d8, checkmate. Paul Morphy only has the bishop and the rook, but in the end, that was all he needed. The aristocratic duo were so shocked by their defeat that their outburst disrupted the performance they were supposed to be enjoying. But chess history had been made. By the time Morphy awoke the next morning, his night at the opera was the talk of Paris. Now widely recognized as the world's greatest chess player, he accomplished everything he could in chess. By 1860, he walked away from the game to begin his law career. Shortly thereafter, the American Civil War occurred. Depressed from his failure to attain success in law and the Civil War, Paul Morphy fell into a state of paranoia and died alone from a stroke at the age of 47. Because of his brilliant yet tragically short career, Paul Morphy is known as the pride and sorrow of chess. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Master Chess Theater. As always, there will be an accompanying quiz on our website, dailychessmusings.com. I am your host, Chris Torrey, signing off until next time. Please remember to like and subscribe.